Well, hello, writers. Welcome to episode number 310. I am Rachael Herron, and I'm so pleased that you are here with me today as we are talking to Maddie Dawson, who is hilarious and wonderful and sweet and funny. And we are talking about overnight success and how many damn years it takes to get to overnight success. You are going to absolutely love this interview with Maddie Dawson, and you will be left inspired and uplifted. So please stick around for that. It's fantastic. Okay, what's going on around here? I'll keep it short because I had a migraine last night and I am dumb today, trying to be as smart as possible. But sometimes after a migraine, I feel like it's actually like my brain is still swollen. And when I move my head too fast, it's like it bumps around. It doesn't quite fit. And my thoughts are not quite clear. So I'll make this opening short. I'm already babbling. What's been going on? I have been writing, and revising. Mostly revising, but a lot of writing. As I said to I think it was 90-day revision class that opened this week. It was so exciting. That somebody said, is it true there's still first drafting and revision? And oftentimes there is. And so I've been doing quite a bit of that. Also, I've been writing an end for this book, which didn't have an ending because that's just the way I work. And it's so fun, y'all. I have gotten to the end. As I record this, it's Thursday. I will deliver this book on Monday. I think I'm going to have a little bit of time to spare. I think that honestly, I will write either the very, very, like the end after the epilogue today or tomorrow. And then I will have the weekend to do my last read through, fix up. I've already revised the book, but I do need to revise these new first draft words I'm writing in the end. And so the book is already very, very clean. And then I will do a run through to see if it really holds together. And then I will send it to my developmental editor on Monday. And I hit this deadline, which was super fast. It will have been, I think I counted 11 weeks from starting the novel from zero, writing the whole thing, and then revising it. And I think it's going to be about 95,000 words, which for me is very fast. For me, as a thinking, slow, high intellection in terms of the Clifton strengths person, this has been so fun. It's been so fun. And what I have learned from it has been so great. And I can't wait to share some of those things with you all. But I'm just very, very excited. Also, I'm tired and I'm ready to get this off my desk and maybe have a few days off next week. I have not taken a day off in a while, in the last week or two, because this deadline was over my shoulder and breathing down my neck. And so I haven't had a weekend, but I'm looking forward to a weekend at some point. Like I said, the 90-day classes opened, and the week that they open is such a joyful thing for me because I get to look at these fresh new groups, these 2 Zoom rooms full of incredible people who are going to be going through something so transformative and wonderful. And I can kind of picture them on the last day when they have their books in their hands, either first drafted or revised, depending on which class they're in. And it's so exciting. And it's a really good group of people. And I've got my grads class running and they're amazing. So I just feel really, really happy with where I am in terms of my job. I love my job. I love writing. I love teaching and I love podcasting. I don't like so much email and the the mechanical, advertising, that kind of thing. That kind of thing leaves me cold. But the stuff that really takes my heart and soul and brain, I love doing. And I am so grateful. There's never a day that I'm not grateful that I don't get to do this. And there's never a day that I am not grateful that you are here along for the ride, picking up tips as we go. I get inspiration and information from every single person I talk to. Speaking of information, get a lot of information. I give a lot of information, and sometimes it's just wrong. Let me clarify what I said last week on the mini episode. Vellum as a tool to format your book, it does not exist on PC, just on Mac. In my head, it was Scrivener, and I know Scrivener was just Mac for so long, and then it went to PC. And for some reason, I got that shift in my head attached to Vellum. I was like, yes, I remember Vellum finally went to PC. Vellum has not gone to PC yet. Vellum is such a strong product for for Mac that sometimes I would recommend even thinking about getting a Mac just to do this, and I just to use Vellum, and I don't say that lightly. But there is another, and I forgot to look this up. There's another. Let me pause this. Yes, there it is. Atticus is one that is used for PC, and according to my friend Penn, it's pretty cheap. I have not looked at it. And Readsy also has a free formatting tool to kind of play around with if you want to do that. If you do have a Mac, though, just use Vellum. Everything is easier. So I am sorry that I got that totally wrong. And as soon as Penn pointed it out, I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're totally right. Totally right. So I think that was all I need to say today before we jump into this interview with Maddie Dawson. Let's do this. Here's a bio for her. Maddie Dawson is the author of 9 novels, including the best-selling and wonderful Matchmaking for Beginners, and 3 nonfiction humor books about parenting from when that used to be funny. She comes from a long line of Southern storytellers, also known as self-proclaimed bald-faced liars, but she's the only one who thought she'd try to make a living at it. She has 3 kids who grew up and now lives with her husband in Guilford, Connecticut. Her most recent novel is The Magic of Found Objects. Okay, you're going to love this one. Enjoy. Please get some of your own writing done. Please come tell me about it. And I wish you very happy writing. Here we go with the interview. Well, I am so pleased to welcome you to the show. Will you please share your name and pronouns with us?
Maddie Dawson, she and her.
Thank you, Maddie. It is a thrill to meet you. We were just chatting off air and we're already friends. So already friends, but we have the mutual friend of Holly Robinson who introduced us, and she told me about you and your writing in your most recent book, which is The Magic of Found Objects. And I really think you came up because, and I'm not sure if you know this, but because I'm making this switch from, I've written like now 5 genres, and I might be going into a 6th, which is this women's fiction with light magical realism, but really about finding magic and finding the universe speaking to you in different ways. So reading The Magic of Found Objects was so delightful for me.
So glad to hear that.
It's so beautifully written too.
I was really sort of uneasy when I started incorporating these little touches of magic. And I
I'm
thought,
very uneasy too.
yeah, it was like all my friends are cynics, nobody's going to speak to me.
Been a cynic up until about 4 years ago when I suddenly was very uncynical. But
exactly. And that's what happened to me. I didn't know what to write about. And it was right after the election, not to bring politics into it.
oh, we can always bring politics into it. I'm sure we have the same ones.
I'm sure we do.
Everyone who doesn't share those opinions has already self-selected out of this podcast. Don't worry. Yeah.
So Trump had been elected and everyone I knew was in just despair.
Yeah.
And I just crawled off in my little space and started writing a book, which was Matchmaking for Beginners, which was about this woman who inherits a house and with it all kinds of magical abilities,
I haven't read that one yet. I can't wait.
Felt guilty writing it. It was like my little secret pleasure. I would be out writing this and I thought nobody's ever going to like it. And when the first person I asked to blurb it loved it and became my best friend and following me around, I thought, and then that's the book of mine that caught on more than any other. And people were writing to me and saying, this is just what I needed, is to believe in magic again. So
thank you for saying that. The one thing that is leading me through writing this book, which is actually on hold while I revise this memoir, but then I'll get back into it, is for the first time in my life, I'm letting the book lead me. I'm asking it to lead me instead of trying to bully it around. And I'm having more fun writing it than I ever have. But also I have that doubt that anybody will ever want to read that kind of thing.
Right. It's true. I really let that book up to the main character, whose name is Blix, and she's this old woman. And honestly, she would wake me up in the middle of the night and I would get up and do whatever she said. It was just like taking dictation. It was the easiest book I've ever written. And I feel like I didn't write it. It just kind of came through me. It sounds so crazy to say.
I'm looking forward to that feeling someday. I still haven't tapped into that yet.
Except for the dread and the self-doubt, it's great.
For all of that that goes along with writing. Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. I love this story. Okay, so let's talk about your writing process because you do a lot. You get a lot done. This is not your only pen name, we can say. So where does all this writing happen? When and where and how? How do you do it?
Well, I try to write every day. I knew since the time I was 5 or 6 years old that I wanted to be a writer, and I would always just go off and write stories while a lot of my friends were riding bicycles and swinging from the trapeze, and I was this kid that just sat and scribbled, and took notes on what everybody was doing, overheard conversations, did the whole thing.
Harriet the Spy. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And so I always knew I wanted to do it, but as life happens and you get married and you have children and you have all these responsibilities and you have to get a real job, you know, I picked newspaper reporting thinking that it's writing, but it turns out it's not really the kind of writing I wanted to do. Like everything had to be true, which was such,
What's such a cramp in our style?
it was such a shock. And I'd be like, but it would be so much better if it had just this had happened. So it was hard for them to instill the concept of truth into me in journalism. It took them a while, and I started writing a humor column to keep myself amused, and that became a book. And then I wrote 2 nonfiction books, and so I've always just written, and just written kind of blog posty things like that. And I had a novel that I was working on for 17 years.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that stayed in the drawer, and then I would pull it out and I would read it. And periodically I'd finish it. I'd get like to the
Yeah.
end of it and I'd read it again and go, this just doesn't work. So I'd
Yeah.
start it again. And I did this for 17 years. And then I found an agent and then she sold it in 2 weeks with a
Holy
bit more.
cow.
Yeah,
Oh my gosh.
like the whole crazy story. And and it was a 2 book contract. And so then I needed to write another book. When I read the contract one day for fun, I was just sitting there, I'll read my contract because this will feel so good. I found out the second book was due in 11 months.
I had the same thing happen to me, except my second book was due in 6 months. And I didn't know how to write a book. I'd only
No,
accidentally written good structure in my first book. I had no, and I failed
right.
in writing my second book. How did you do? Like I had to learn, I had to redo the whole thing.
You did. I had to just, I think my 17 years was maybe teaching me.
Yeah,
I mean, I had no.
absolutely.
And I'm sure like you, I mean, like me, I mean, you probably thought, well, we read a lot. So well, it's just instilled in our
It'll
brains.
just
It'll just
happen.
happen. It'll just
And sometimes
happen.
it does. Sometimes it does. And
Yeah, it
sometimes it
did. In
doesn't.
fact, when we got those first books. But then
Exactly.
you really do have to kind of learn to do it. They kind of held my hand through it, which was nice. And then I did finish it because they instilled the fear of God in me. It's like, if you don't finish this, you're dead and you will never work in this town again.
Name will be Mud.
Yes.
And then what happened?
And then what happened, I finished it and then they gave me another 2 book contract. And so I guess what I say about my process is that every day I sit down and do something, but it tends to happen that I lollygag a bit. And then as the deadline approaches, I get more and more like, I really have to do this thing.
You're
So
speaking my
that
language. Yes.
the last 2 weeks before a book is due is I'm just a crazy person, not eating, not sleep, getting up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Do your characters wake you up in the night and tell you things? And
No, I wish they
no,
did. Only my worries do. Yeah. I would
oh,
if a character woke me up, I would be so happy. I wake up thinking about the characters and trying to bully them a little bit in my head. So I'd like to switch that a little bit.
yeah, that would
Do
be a
you
good thing.
do you plot or do you pants?
I'm mostly pants.
Yeah.
And I mean, as this is, I mean, I just finished my 11th novel. So you can't pants your way through that,
No,
really.
no.
So I've learned to a little bit kind of plan, but it's hard to get me to plan. I don't kind of know story first. I know character
Me
first.
too. Me too.
And
And when I sit down to try to plot, I I've done this enough times now that I also know that I'm not getting the best ideas just sitting there trying to think of ideas. The ideas come when these characters are on the page and I'm writing them into corners, which they'll probably never, those corners will never see the light of day. But I
right.
could not have gotten to what they wanted to do in the book without going into the corner, which is very frustrating.
I
But
know it is. And I'm feeling like I'm just following imaginary people around, waiting for them to do something interesting. And then sometimes it's pages and pages. So that's not time, a good use of time, let's say. It would be
yeah,
nice to know. I kind of envy people who just know what their characters are going to do, but
I don't kind of envy that. I envy them with like all of my heart. But I have to say that I have a friend who is an incredible plotter, and he worked me through structure one time for this romance that I was doing, and the whole book was plotted out, and then I wrote it, and I've never hated anything more. Like, and the book was fine. Readers like it; they can't actually tell, but I hated it. So
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. That really, I was teaching a writing workshop one time, and we went around the first day, like, what are you working on? What are you working on? And a woman told me the entire plot of a novel, right? And it was fascinating. And I'm listening and listening. And then finally I said, how much of it do you have written? And she said, oh, I haven't written any of it. And I thought, and that novel has never been written, right?
no, of
Because
course it hasn't.
he knew too much.
She knew too
You
much,
you
and
have
then
to surprise yourself.
there are people who are magnificent plotters, I believe, and who do love that discovery. And and as that same friend Jay Thorne says, if I have 10,000 words of the plot written out and the book is 100,000 words, I'm still pantsing 90% of it,
Oh,
right?
that's a point.
So that's something to keep in mind. But I think what happens is, and I've seen this with my own students, is that the more rigidly plotted ones, as soon as the book takes a turn, then they doubt everything that they've done before and after, and it can be this existential quandary that they get stuck in.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I think that's absolutely true. So I like the way I do it, even though it causes
how much of
angst.
it do you know? Do you know the
I
ending? Do you
kind
know the
of the
dark
beginning,
moment?
and I know where I hope it's going to end.
Yeah.
I always say it's like, I'm started in California and I'm driving across country, but I don't
Yes.
know if I'm going to go to the ball of string in Kansas, or am I going to take the northern route, see Montana this time and go up that way.
Oh, that's a beautiful way to say it.
So it's like being on a nice trip.
Yeah.
But what makes me crazy about the way I do it, though, is that often I'll be, all the way to Ohio, and then I find out, the main character has a brother, who needed to be in the
Who
book
needed
from
to
the
be in Gainesville? And now
yes, exactly. And you go, could you not have told me that earlier?
I don't know if you do anything like this, but I do this thing that I encourage students to do too, is just make a note of it and write forward as if the brother has been in the whole book. I change
Oh,
everything on
yes.
paper plot wise, but I do nothing.
Oh, that's
I
so
don't
smart.
I don't go back and add anything in. I just keep writing to the end with the brother. And then if that brother didn't really need to be there, you can kill him again and he's not through the whole book.
And you don't have to
Yeah.
kill it everywhere. Right. That's
Oh,
really, I have a lot of trouble not writing page one 4 million times.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
my favorite thing is to rewrite. I will rewrite all
Me too.
day.
Revision is where it is at. Okay, so
It's
I was
so,
going to ask you what your biggest challenge is. Do you think it's that, or do you have a different biggest challenge when it comes to
I
writing?
think the biggest challenge is first drafts.
Yeah, me
I
too.
feel like there's just all the possibilities in the universe. And how do you pick one path? It's so tough. And also just that getting the characters right completely. And I notice that doesn't happen as rapidly as I would wish. That
Oh, yeah.
I can think of all their characteristics, but they're not real people until I've gotten almost through the whole first draft, and then I'm have to go in and flesh
Yeah.
them out when they become real.
I just I do the exact same thing. And sometimes they're not real at all, even in the first draft at all, until I go into the
It all,
second draft.
yeah.
And I almost think it's a velveteen moment,
Uh-huh.
until they're really, really beaten up and I have just punched them in the face so many times on accident while I'm flinging my arms around, and they finally get real by that second draft.
Exactly. And
But
isn't
it's a
that a
really
wonderful moment?
it's a wonderful moment. But what it is it's so frustrating for people trying to complete their first draft, and they say, oh, my characters don't feel real. No, they don't. They feel like cardboard cutouts, and that's normal. And you just keep pushing them around the page until they take that first breath.
That's so true. It's so true. And then they start to really talk, and start to just tell you. And then I know it's the best thing. It's why we do the work, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Oh, see, Holly knew that we should be talking. Exactly. What is your biggest joy when it comes to writing? Is it that, or is it something else?
I think it is that, just that moment where it starts to feel real. And then there's sentences, right? Like occasionally you discover like the way to end a chapter in a way that makes you just get up and want to run around the room, or just the joy of the words themselves coming in the right order. And then you think, what a crazy life this is, to just be off by ourselves, making stuff up, talking to imaginary people,
that we're allowed to do this.
We're allowed to do it is amazing. I know. I always wanted this. This is the job I always wanted to have, and it's just it's all
never
the things.
Take it for granted.
It's hard and it's fun and it's every. It wouldn't be good if it wasn't hard, right? Because then it would be,
I'm sure that you're right. And on the hard days, I still want it to be a little easier.
I might be. I'm also in revision of a book, so I know what you mean. With this, the revision just came back last night, and I need to wade into it and see. My developmental editor just read it, and she wrote that letter. That's like, I love it, but
yes. The revision that this won't come out for a few months. So listeners will have already heard us talk about this before, but the revision letter I got back was 1 page. I love it. All the I love it. And then 17 pages of the things to fix.
17 pages.
And on each page, there was probably a little bit of praise, but then there was, and she's 98% right. She does not quite enjoy my level of enthusiasm and hyperbole. And that's fine. That's a personal thing.
Oh, I have a lot of trouble with that.
Yeah, but the stuff with structure, I will, she's completely right. So what I did was I was so beat up by it that I just got out a highlight. Well, I got out a virtual highlighter on the Word document, and I highlight every word that was half complimentary, which was really helpful. So then when I opened that 18 page document, that's what I've been looking at.
Because that's all we hear anyway is the bad stuff, right? You have to do whatever you can do. In fact, reading a good letter, you're just like, where's the butt? Where's the
exactly? Butt? You don't believe it anyway. Yeah.
Anyway, I know. I'm like, wait a minute. My editor said nice things, and she's just polite.
Because that's what they get paid to do. Yeah, just be polite. That's hilarious.
The strangest things. Oh well, comes with the temperament, I suppose. So yours is a memoir that's so it's 17 pages of memoir changes.
Yep. And it was mostly
your voice.
It's all my voice, but it's also, but her problems with it were some structural stuff, which I knew I was struggling with. So she was spot on, but yeah, she was just spot on, and everything that she's saying. And now that I'm firmly in it, I'm halfway through the whole revision, and it's just swimming, and it's fantastic, and all of this.
Oh, good.
But those first 72 hours are like, oh no.
I know. When you just want to get under your bed with the pillow.
Yeah.
And you suck your thumb for a while.
Yeah.
But then it is amazing, isn't it? How it gets better. Like
they get smarter.
Right?
Yeah. The first time you read it, you think they're just an idiot. And the second time you're like, well, maybe not an idiot. And the third time you're like, oh, she's kind of good at this job. Huh. Maybe this should be her job. Maybe she's an editor.
Maybe she's good.
Oh my gosh.
Like, she's not a writer. She doesn't know.
How dare she? How dare she
write a book? Let's see.
I do think, actually saying that, I do think that there it's valid to have those few hours or days or whatever you need for the how dare she feeling. Just like when we were 16 and our mom said we couldn't go to the, Hell's Angels party. And then when we were 25, we're like, oh, that was probably a good idea, Mom.
It's probably smart. It's true. But I mean, what you're saying though about the tone of your book, like hyperbole,
Yeah,
I love hyperbole.
I do
I
too.
live
And
in hyperbole.
my readers do too.
Yeah.
And at least I've been around the block long enough to know that some of the places I needed to be toned down a little bit. Yes, I can take, but other places where she said you could tone down the fluidity of this language. And I'm thinking, no, that's just me. I really did. She left a comment. I don't think you'd really feel this way. Fabulous. I did feel that
Oh
way.
yes.
And I need to make it more clear on the page that this is actually, happening and how I
Right.
felt. So it's not unbelievable. And that's really helpful too.
Just to know where you
Yeah.
needed to amp it up.
Sorry, we're going the other direction.
Thanks, but here's where we're going.
Oh my
I
God. Well,
know.
yeah, go on.
No, I was going to say my first drafts are always sort of over the top like that, and then I have to like cut it.
Our friend Holly Robinson is one of my first and dearest readers. She's one of my only betas if I ever use beta readers, and it's hilarious because I've written a couple thrillers in the last few years, and I will send the thriller to her, and she will comment on every one of my most beautiful phrases. Like she'll just be thrilling to it, her whole soul singing. And those are always the exact sentences that my agent or my editor kills. And so I kind of know that if Holly and I just think it's gorgeous, it's probably got to go in a thriller. It could stay maybe in a women's fiction, but in a thriller where I'm constantly working to up the pace,
Right.
it's too pretty. It's got to go.
Don't you want to just do a compilation of all of those phrases? Wouldn't that be just the most wonderful book?
An embroidery book. Yeah.
It'd be a poem. You could make a poem out of it.
Actually love that idea. I have been getting more into poetry lately. That's
There you
hilarious.
go. Do it.
Oh my gosh. Let's turn it back on you now.
Okay.
Can you share a craft tip of any sort with our listeners?
Yes. My craft tip is that you have to just keep going through the self-doubt. And as a person who teaches writing, I feel like I just see, and I have it myself, all these insecurities. What right do you have to be telling this story? Who do you think you are?
Who's going to want to read this? It's been said before. It's been said better. Yeah.
Right. This plot, come on, this plot's been done 400 times. All the plots have been done at least 400 times.
Yes.
And developing a voice and being true to that voice is really the key to it, I think. And as we were saying, it doesn't come out necessarily in the first 400 drafts. It may take a while. Yeah. But as somebody who had a book in the drawer for 17 years, I never thought that book was going to be published. I thought it was going to be my life's work, that I would always just be fiddling with it, and that was a nice life. I would just get it out and fiddle with it. And then one day I said, you know what, it's done. And I put it away for a year and then read it by accident. I came across it in my computer and went, oh, I think I'll read this. I went, it's done.
Oh, wow.
It was like done. Yeah. So, you know how the elves do come to the,
I wish they came more.
Usually they dismantle things. Usually, like you write the most brilliant stuff and you look at it the next day and the elves have just taken all the good stuff out of it.
Yeah.
But every now and then I can vouch for the elves. They get in there and they fix it. And you go, huh, I thought this was terrible.
So what did that feel like, being so attached to this 17-year brain process and then churning out books, it only took a year to write or less or a little bit more. How does that attachment feel when you look back at that book?
When I love that book. And it was a book that was sort of like a memoir almost. It was a novelized version of my relationship with my bipolar mom called What Comes After Crazy. And it was just a real, throwing it all there, which she came to visit one time while I was writing and she said, I need to see that book. I need to see it. And I'm like, no. It hadn't been published. It was still, pages and pages. And I thought, I can't show it to her. But she begged and begged and begged. And finally, I just exhausted, handed it to her. And she went off and read and read and read. And she came back in. And you know what she said? You really nailed your grandmother.
No, she did not.
And it just, people don't recognize themselves.
That's what I always say. They don't recognize themselves, or they see, and in the same way, they see themselves in the baker. I can't believe you made me the baker. He's such a jerk. I'm like, that never crossed my mind.
It's not you.
Yeah,
I
that's
know. Isn't that funny?
hilarious,
Yeah.
Maddie.
Yeah. She really did think it was her. And I'm like,
Was she alive when it published?
yes, she was alive when it published. She died a few years later, and on her deathbed, she was a hilarious Southerner, very irreverent, crazy, bipolar. She's on her deathbed and she's lying there, doing the deathbed scene. And she says, I just hope you'll write about me. And then she opens her eyes and leans over and goes, and what comes after crazy is not about me.
She knew.
She did know.
But it was probably pushed so far down that she wouldn't have known
Yeah.
on a conscious level just on a Tuesday.
Exactly.
Oh,
Exactly.
that's fabulous. There's an essay in there too, if you haven't already written
There
that one.
is an essay in there, isn't there?
I want to read that. Oh, gorgeous. Thank you for that. What thing in your life affects your writing in a surprising way?
Sleep.
Yeah. Amen.
Sleep.
Do you struggle with sleep, or are you a good sleeper?
I do, because often it happens to me. I'm kind of a night writer. I wish so much to be the kind that spring out of bed at 4:30 or 5 and write in the dark until everybody wakes up. But I'm more the one that if I'm up at 4, it's because I'm still up, And so often I'll be writing late at night and then I go to bed and I'm lying there and just the whole book plays out in a movie, in front of me. And I have to get up and write it because what happens if you don't? You think,
it never comes back. It never comes back.
Never, never, never. So I think if I go too many days with that kind of schedule, I'm like, then I can't really do it anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I need to, I wish I could get like a normal kind of schedule going, but I do love writing at night. And I'll go in, I'll tell my husband, it's 10:30. I'm just going to go and turn off the computer, and then 2:00, I'm like, oh, I really should go to bed.
It is such a delicious feeling though, when the hours are lost.
Isn't it?
It's the absolute, obviously this is an obvious statement, but it's the opposite of where you've been working for hours and you have 14 words, that
I know.
That's just agony.
Which happens just as often, but the flow is such a great thing, isn't it?
And I think about flow in the same way that I think about sleep, in that we never know when we're in it.
Right.
If you know when you're in it, you're out of it.
Yes, exactly.
Which is really frustrating.
You only know when you look at the clock later and realize, oh my goodness, how did this happen?
Yeah.
And you can't order it up. You can't make it happen.
No.
And I can sit at the keyboard during the day, hands on the keyboard, waiting, not a word comes, or, 14 words that are bad, 13 of which have to be crossed out. But just the act of turning off the computer, and then suddenly I see it all. I know.
Do you always write on the computer, or do you ever catch anything on notebooks or?
I have all kinds of little notes and napkins and all around, and notebooks that make no sense, that I can't ever find the page that I want. I'm such a disorganized writer. I love it when people talk about their systems like Scrivener and stuff like that. I've never been able to make that work for me.
I start a lot of systems. I finally realized that I'm a system maker and I'm a plan maker. And then it doesn't matter when things fall apart, because they always fall apart. I get the energy from making the plans. And I eventually get somewhere because the plan was made and I was going somewhere, and I don't beat myself up when it just all falls apart.
Isn't that the best thing? That's the nicest thing, when you've done a few books and you just can know now that, okay, this is somehow
fine.
It's going to work.
It's somehow going to work. Yeah. We don't know how, but it will. We have that trust.
This is where the magic comes in.
Exactly. Okay. So tell me, if you don't mind, what is the best book that you've read recently and why did you love it?
Well, I have been on of all things, an Ann Tyler kick.
Oh, I love her. I haven't read her in so long.
I know, I hadn't either. And I realized I'd missed a lot of her books too. So there was this treasure trove of books to read. And there's something about reading her, the rhythms of her writing they do something to my brain where I can then go and write. Like I read her and I want to run and write.
I love reading
And
those kind of writers.
yes, yes, it's so worthwhile because if you're reading bad writing, don't you find it turns off the writing urge in you?
It
It just
absolutely
kind
does. And it's
of,
also about tone too. I have a couple girlfriends here and we were all watching the second season of Bridgerton this last weekend
oh yeah, yeah.
that
I
came
haven't
out.
watched that yet.
Oh, it's so good. It's really good.
Oh,
It's better than the first season. But then
oh
we
good.
all found that when we sat down at our computer, we were using long words and no contractions. For the next 3 days, we had to like weed it out of ourselves. So back to Ann Tyler, what is it that you read?
I just read French Braid, which is her new one
Oh,
that
I
came out.
haven't read it. And it's still
It's
good.
really good.
Oh,
It's really, really good. And each time I think, oh, I'm not going to love it as much as I love
right.
some of the old ones that I just adore.
I think that's why I haven't read her in 10 or 15 years because I adored her so much. I'm scared that
I
something would
know
let me
it
down.
didn't hold up. It didn't hold up right. I
And she
know.
does. Oh,
And
that's good
she
to know.
does. She does. Just her characters and her phrasing and her way of just casually, it just feels like she just sat down,
Yeah.
which we know is not true. We have that illusion.
Thank you for that. That's going on my TBR pile. Speaking of TBR piles and what people should put on them, can you please tell us about the magic of found objects?
Yes, I can. The Magic of Found Objects is a book that started out wanting to be about Woodstock. And it was, and it ended up being about a girl, a woman who was conceived at Woodstock by two people who never should have been together. A farmer kid who had just graduated from high school and driven from the New Hampshire farm to Woodstock, New York, and watched this whole thing happen and fell in love with this hippie artist who was there. And they conceive these twins, and then they don't hold the marriage together. And so it's about this young woman's life and how she navigates. She's now, I had to set it in 2006 because I didn't want her to be 50.
Right.
You
Right.
know? um and so she kind of is figuring out love and what love means, and her best friend suggests that they get married after they've both been in unhappy relationships. And do you marry your friend or do you hold out for the magic of love? And she's got these two moms that she loves, her real mom, who is the crazy hippie woman, and the stepmother who kind of raised her, who was, you know, solid and dependable. And each one has a different pull on her. So it was fun to write. It was my pandemic book that I sat in the bed in my
Oh,
pajamas writing it, you know.
oh, I saw a good review and I was just glancing a minute ago at the Amazon page that said something like you walk in expecting a classic rom-com and you get just so much more. And I
Oh,
I
oh,
thought that was so true. And it was
oh,
just delicious. It was really
thank you.
so it was such a treat to read.
I appreciate
Yeah.
that. I appreciate
And
that.
where can we find you online?
I am at www.maddiedawson.com.
Perfect.
Maddie instead of Matty. I get called Maggie Dawson, you know. So it's like,
Right.
yeah, I answered everything.
Thank you so much for being on the show. You are a delight, and I'm so glad that we're friends now.
Thank you. We're going to be best friends, and I'm coming to New Zealand to see you. So be
Excellent.
well.
That's the bed right behind.
Okay.
Right behind. That's where you'll be sleeping.
Good. Oh, great. Great.
Thank you, Maddie.
Thank you
Bye.
for having me.